Why do these essays and poems haunt me so intimately? It is rare that an author should summon in a single vision theology and biology, Curie, Dostoevsky, and Sting, ancient daguerreotypes and distant pagodas to give them form. I first read this book in the way one should not read it, quickly, in a single sitting, late at night. By the time I reached Geneviève Delacroix, I had to stop, not because the prose was difficult, but because something in it had become unbearable, perhaps the way a woman exceeds what you were prepared to feel. The woman, a survivor of Auschwitz, still waiting. The image, a photograph of an empty camp kept framed above a living room cabinet. The relic, a Catalan Bible returned through an uncrossable ocean. The music, Olivier Messiaen's O Sacrum Convivium. Messiaen, who himself composed at the German prison camp Stalag 8A, spent his life insisting that passion was not a consolation for suffering, but its transfiguration. I sat for a long time after that. I did not feel I had read a story. I felt I had been shown a new color. That, I think, is what Rafael Poch has built here. Not a collection of arguments, though arguments are present. Not a devotional volume, though devotion runs through every page. Not the doctrinal interplay between theology and science that animated his previous book. Theology here functions instead as a literary device, a basso continuo, a sustaining presence beneath a Baroque architecture of memories. Each triptych opens with a verse from sacred writing, from Genesis through latter-day Saint Scripture, not as an epigraph in the conventional sense, but as a tuning fork, a single note struck before the piece begins, whose hidden resonance gathers image, poetry, and melody into a single grammar, achieving the rare balance between intellectual precision and literary inevitability. The resulting compositions are singular and genuinely difficult to classify. The author himself calls them triptychs. The word derives from the Greek tri and tyche, three folds. In antiquity, it designated hinged writing tablets whose panels were closed to protect the text within. Centuries later, Giotto and Rubens recognized in them a structure Christianity had intuited. Three distinct forms opening toward a single mystery. From the Gothic period onward, the triptych expanded into one of the great monumental forms of Christian devotion, unfolding across cathedral altars and stained glass windows from Byzantium to northern Europe. Two wings flanked a central image, opened or closed according to the liturgical calendar. Closed, the outer faces immortalized saints, donors, or mourners in muted grays, kneeling in perpetual prayer before the hidden work. On feast days, the wings opened and revealed, in radiant color, the Annunciation, the Passion, the Crucifixion, the Resurrection. The same object, suddenly, a different world. Poch revives that ancient structure in a strangely contemporary form. On the page, image and text rest in spatial relation, the triptych closed. But like its Gothic predecessors, the work also possesses an open state. At the foot of each triptych, a QR code releases what the page deliberately withholds. A film in which the art moves, the text speaks, and music reveals. Like the animated tattoos of Ray Bradbury's Illustrated Man, Poch's triptychs come to life when the wings open. Poch has not written a book. He has written liturgy that exists in two dimensions simultaneously, the spatial and the temporal, the still and the moving. This is an original conception of what literature can be, a single work that breathes in two registers at once. Three examples may suggest the structure. 1. In Full of Eyes and Wings, Poch pairs the first two movements of a three-part poem on sacred violence and animal suffering with Krzysztof Penderecki's Polymorphia. Written in the shadow of Hiroshima, the composition carries the sound of the 20th century at its most fractured and devastating. Transforming the blood of sacrificial lambs beneath ancient altars into the vast mechanical waste of life in the modern age. In the last movement of the poem, Hildegard of Bingen's De Spiritu Sancto answers that brutality from across 8 centuries with sacramental serenity. A vision of creation not abandoned, but divinized by the very God who once demanded that it be sacrificed. That transformation from modernist anguish into medieval stillness enacts the poem's own passage from rupture to glorification more completely than any literary device could. Two. The second example comes from Dostoevsky and the Behavior Machine, where Poch sets an essay on Skinner, conscience, and moral consequence against Vangelis's Tears in the Rain, composed for Blade Runner. The pairing is astonishing because that score carries, almost perfectly, the metaphysical problem at the center of the piece. Whether a human being is only the sum of conditioned responses. Skinner's world reduces consciousness to reinforcement, circuitry, and consequence. The replicants of Blade Runner are the logical descendants of that vision. Biological Skinner boxes sophisticated enough to speak. Yet Roy Batty's final monologue, woven into the triptych, undoes that reduction. Batty, who should be nothing more than machine, achieves something irreducibly human. Transcendence through compassion. Batty becomes human because he knows he will die. The awareness of extinction transforms mechanism into tragedy. That is deeply Dostoevskian. Vangelis floods the scene with reverberant electronic chords resembling rain in neon, an organ composition of harrowing solitude, simultaneously futuristic and ancient.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die.
The genius of the pairing is not merely that the music fits. It resolves without argument the philosophical wound of the triptych. The score becomes the soul the Skinner box cannot explain. Three. The poems deserve particular attention because they are easily underestimated. They are austere, and a reader accustomed to more expansive lyricism may pass through them too quickly. This would be a mistake. In them, Poch works in the imagism tradition, through juxtaposition rather than explanation, arranging images like tesserae in a mosaic, meaning emerging not through argument but through slow accretion. Consider these stanzas from The Garden Before Gravity. White heron, sharp, watchful, unclaimed sentinel, striped thylacine, undergrowth and moon, a hesitating god. Set against Ravel's Lever du jour, the reader begins to discern correspondences the poem refuses to name directly. These examples expose the singularity of Poch's triptychs, their ecumenical reach. Most interdisciplinary books feel interdisciplinary. The moment an author crosses from native territory into borrowed land, the prose acquires an accent, the confidence shifts, the citations become defensive. Even the best of them, Sachs, Robinson, Eco, carry the faint smell of the library, of research conducted rather than knowledge inhabited. The Medusa of God does not feel that way. The author does not experience the movement between quantum probability clouds, the tabernacle of Moses, Ligeti's micropolyphony, Finnish folktales, and Hannah Arendt's banality of evil as movement at all. For Poch, these are not different rooms visited in sequence. They are the same building. Poch's universal vision draws from his theology. Joseph Smith's cosmology of a God for whom all things are simultaneously present. The sparrow and the galaxy held in the same attention, without hierarchy of importance. The Illustrated Man triptych reveals this vision. God dwelling upon a globe like a sea of glass and fire where all things are manifest. Yet in my experience with LDS thinkers, most hold this belief intellectually, but not perceptually. They understand reality as unified, but experience it fragmented, and their work reflects the gap between belief and perception. What makes Poch unusual, perhaps uniquely so among writers working today, is that the belief appears to have become perception. The eclecticism is not performed. It is not assembled. It is perhaps, in small measure, an author as comfortable with such vastness as his God is. A prose that incarnates, in its very method, the Creator. This is extraordinarily rare, and what gives the triptychs their peculiar beauty. The reader experiences not the pleasure of clever synthesis, but the unsettling sense that these things were never separate to begin with. There is a word that keeps returning to me as I ponder this book: longing. Not nostalgia, which is softer and more self-indulgent, but the sharper thing, the ache of having glimpsed something that cannot be fully reclaimed. The three veiled virgins of the thirsty land, pouring tea at dusk for a man who will not return, their skin vellum and their bones acacia roots. The narrator of Amada, yearning even in the presence of the beloved. Or the Neanderthal inheritance in God's kind, still lingering within us after 50,000 years. This is a book haunted by what persists after certainty recedes, by what memory preserves not as narrative, but through fleeting hues, distant melodies, and the touch left behind in an old mannequin. It belongs, in this sense, to the tradition of dandelion wine, a book readers retain not as plot, but as the warmth of a late summer evening and the feeling of being young in a world that is also ending. Such writing does not instruct, it imprints. And the imprint, if it takes, endures long after the argument has faded. Poch's longing finds its clearest expression in the Kalevala, the Finnish national epic upon which his intermission triptych builds. After losing a singing contest to the bard Väinämöinen, the young Youkahainen offers his sister Aino to the old sage to save himself from a spell. Unable to accept the life awaiting her, Aino wanders to the sea and disappears beneath its waters. Later, while fishing, Väinämöinen catches a mysterious fish. When he reaches for it, the creature becomes Aino herself and slips away, mocking him before vanishing forever. Akseli Gallen-Kallela captured that moment in his Aino myth triptych, the old poet vainly reaching toward what has already begun to disappear. At that instant of vertigo, Väinämöinen is not one man, but all men. For all poets attempt something similar and fail. Art cannot preserve experience intact. It can only recover fragments refracted through time, a gesture, a thunderstorm, the angle of dusk upon water. What survives is not the object, but its resonance, already slipping from our grasp, like Aino beneath the silent lake. That, ultimately, is what Poch has accomplished here. He dedicated his work to those who will come after, that they may understand our attempts to see. The dedication is not modest, it is precise. His triptychs are attempts, their recollection fragmentary and incomplete. And that incompleteness may be the most honest thing art can offer.